Hopefully they figure it out. Okay, here we go. So essentially what we have in store is this. I'm going to preach that you should start early. Waiting until May is too late. Even now is borderline too late, but there's still time to make some good headway before beach season. Again, be realistic, but we're going to show you some strategies to expedite things as efficiently as possible. And then, of course, I can't do a presentation without revealing and reminding you of the Big Five Foundation, because that'll be most important for all of your purposes. But we leave it to the last because I know you came here for some new stuff. So this is my cautionary story. First off, I would have this panic around this time of year that I'd gained a bunch of weight over the winter, and I would crash diet. I did keto. I did everything. Sorry, I'm trying to add people from the waiting room again as I talk, and I'm not a good multitasker. So I'd lose the weight successfully, great. But then summer would be summer, and I would regain it as quickly as I lost it, and end up, worse than where I started by the time winter comes around. Rinse and repeat. So what broke this pattern? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today, some of these strategies. But we don't want you falling into this cycle because it's actually a lot harder in the long run. If you have to do it more than once, it becomes a repeated pattern. So for me, my old approach, because as I'll talk about in a second, I thought I knew it all. Sorry, someone talking? Did you have a question or no? Okay, so just mute yourself if your background is getting picked up. My old approach was any diet with a name that I found online that sounded cool. And I would do that for a while. It got to a point where it was pretty bad consequences. I'll talk about that in a second. I actually ended up in the ER in Fort Frances, Ontario, of all places. And some hard lessons learned. So what were those? Well, first this was the breaking point. My midnight visit to the ER in Fort Frances. I was having irregular bowel movements. Sorry if this is too much information for you guys, but there's context to this. And it was due to this keto diet I was eating that was devoid of fiber. Some people must supplement with fiber on keto. I didn't know any better. This was a long time ago now. And sure enough, things were getting worse and worse to the point where I was getting intense abdominal pain. Went in to the ER. They hooked me up with IVs, gave me some pill, and straightened me out pretty quick. But the doctor scolded me for the dietary choices I was making at the time. And that was my first rude awakening that there's probably a better way to this whole process. I was 19 or 20, maybe 21 years old at that point. What I didn't realize was I was falling prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect. I was on the peak of Mount Stupid, where you actually know nothing, but your confidence is very high that you know everything because you have access to Google. And you're convinced this diet you found online with no scientific backing is the solution for you, right? So thankfully, we're going 22 years in the future, lots of money spent on credentials, but most of my experience, trial and error, came from just in the trenches with me and, almost 1,600 people that I've worked with through CalFit coaching since. So that's why I can be now on the slope of enlightenment, arguably the plateau of sustainability, where I know better. And if anyone's telling you that there's some secret hack, that some new diet is the solution for you, they are probably on Mount Stupid, and you should not listen to them. Because those who have gone through the trenches know that the basics work best, and the foundation is built on sensible habits. Okay, so take anything you hear online or from Karen at the water cooler at the office with a very serious grain of salt, because it could get you in trouble. Could get you in the ER like me. We don't want that. All right. So with that out of the way, this is the guaranteed failure formula. So if you don't want to succeed, rely solely on motivation, extreme measures, and then try to out-exercise poor nutrition. Go to those Orange Theory classes 5 times a week, and then wash it down with a bottle of wine. Let me know how that goes for you. Okay. So that's if you don't want results, feel free to do that. If you want results, though, stay tuned. That's what the next 20 or so minutes is all about. All right. So what we're talking about is, first off, a better way involves just creating sustainable habits now, getting some good momentum, and I'm going to show you how to expedite, get some quick wins early, but then show you how the exit strategy works. Because summer is tough, but you got to have a plan still. Got to reset the maintenance and have some fun weekends and avoid that rebound weight gain that so many fall prey to because they go crazy. Frank the Tank style all summer long. All right, let's get into it now, finally. So type 1 in the chat, you're still with me? I know how it can be tough late in the evenings. You guys are the ones that are serious about your health, though. If you're here, you could have been on Netflix, like the majority of North Americans who are picking Cheeto dust out of their belly buttons as we speak, watching some series, and you guys are invested 30 minutes or so with me because you take your health seriously. So I appreciate you being here because that means you're a cut above the rest. Okay. So let's make sure you get some full value for it. First off is what I call protein pacing. Now, this isn't earth-shattering information. Most of you know you should be eating protein, but the difference here is how you implement it. And there's a sweet spot. More frequent meals means better results. Not 6 meals in Tupperware. I don't find that sustainable for the most. But if you're getting 4 protein feedings in a day, you're going to get better results than someone who's skipping breakfast, skipping lunch, and just having this big, massive meal at the end of the day. Okay. So studies show frequent protein beats one giant load. And muscle protein synthesis, which is essentially giving your muscles an opportunity to build, maintain, at the very least maintain, and recover, right? And the more protein boosts they get, the better off you'll be. Okay. There is a study that was done quite a ways ago now, but those who ingested protein every 3 hours stimulated more effectively than the larger, less frequent doses, got better results, got better fat loss. So keep that in mind. Don't obsess about having a bunch of meals a day, but try to get out of the routine of skipping breakfast and barely eating lunch and then having all your calories. Awesome. We got some ones in the chat. Guys are following along. Perfect. So what does it look like? I think it's pretty straightforward. You don't have to have breakfast as soon as you wake up, but you should get a healthy serving of protein within a couple hours. So that can be eggs, egg whites, Greek yogurt. Protein shake is my go-to because I don't like sitting down to a meal and I'm rushed in the morning. But within a couple hours of waking up after I had coffee, water, I'll usually get a good amount of protein in. Lunch, I think everything's pretty straightforward there. It could be a salad. If you're trying to save some calories, it could be a sandwich, frankly, if it's got enough lean meats on it, right? There is an opportunity after workouts to have some faster digesting whey protein, but don't worry too much about that. If it just lines up with your meals, great. Have a meal within an hour of completing that workout. Dinner, more of the same. Protein, starch, veg, and then pre-sleep, there might be some benefit to a slower digesting protein. Casein is the powder version, but cottage cheese has a big percentage of its protein from casein, so that might be an option for you. Again, don't worry about that. That's majoring in the minors, but just think 4 servings of protein, 3 square meals and a snack, roughly 30 grams, maybe more if you're a bigger guy. Otherwise, good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Making sense? Good.
No.
Okay, so this one's a little controversial, but I'm a believer in it for the right person. And that's not everyone on this call, certainly. But it's for some. And it's those who qualify, right? If your BMI is north of 30, or you have potentially pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetes, then these things can be approved and are fairly cost effective. Now, if you don't fit in that category, you're just trying to lose the last 10, 20 pounds, probably more risk than reward here, right? And what I'm seeing, I'm in these support groups because I lurk and I want to know about the latest and greatest that's out there in my industry. It's not without its side effects. And you see a post every day with someone who's not losing weight despite feeling like crap, nausea, constipation, insomnia. Potentially muscle loss is the big one for me. If you don't pair these medications with the appropriate strength training and a diet that's, higher enough in protein, as much as 40% of the weight you're losing on the scale is the wrong weight you don't want to lose. Like there's women like prematurely getting osteoporosis on these drugs because their bone loss is significant. So keep that in mind. They can be a good addition to the right plan, but they're not a substitute. They're not a magic pill, unfortunately. What they do ultimately is suppress your appetite infinitely better than anything else in the market, but not without its trade-offs. Okay. Make sense? Okay. I'm not a big drug guy, but I believe these are here to stay, especially with the ad budgets behind them. Every second commercial is something related to these GLP-1s. Ozempic is the big one. So just be aware. The ads may look like it's all rosy, but it's not without its trade-offs. Okay, number 3 is what I call fat loss sprints. This is going to be very timely for you if you've left it to the last minute here and you want to get fast results. I don't recommend going below a 25% calorie deficit. And I'll share what that looks like in a second. And I want to get in and get out if I'm going to go that aggressive. Okay. Make sure you're muted when you come in, just to make sure it doesn't record your screen. So what does this look like? I hope I have another slide. Yes. So for the first month, meaning April 15th to May 15th, maybe push it to the end of May, is 25% deficit. So how that looks, hopefully this is big enough on your screen, but a 25% deficit for someone whose maintenance is 2,400 calories is 1,800 calories, 600 calories a day. Even at that, and that's a fair level of deprivation in my book for someone that's maintaining at 2,400. That still only translates to maybe 1.5 to 1.2 pounds per week. Okay, and that's aggressive. So these pipe dreams thinking you're going to lose 2, 3, 4. Yes, there's some water weight early, but if you're consistently losing 2, 3, 4 pounds, less you're over 300 pounds, very unlikely. And that's actually concerning to me, because that means we're likely losing muscle. Your strength is going down the tubes and bone loss. Okay. So consider 1 pound a week. Do I have a visual? Okay. 1 pound fat. That's a lot of fat. If you're actually losing fat, most plans that have people dropping weight very quickly, it's a little bit of fat, it's a lot of water, and a little bit of muscle, if not more muscle. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's as aggressive as I recommend you go. Then we return to maintenance calories for a period of a couple weeks, or infinity if you got to your goal weight, unlikely in 4 weeks. And then you can re-enter another deficit for another 4 weeks and kind of repeat that cycle until you get where you want to go. Now, I rarely have to program this for someone because it usually happens by default. You know, you go 3, 4 weeks doing really well, and your kids get sick, you go on vacation, work gets busy, you fall off the wagon a bit. These things happen by accident, but it's a good mindset to have that you don't need to be perfect week after week for 52 weeks to see results. Type a yes in the chat if that made sense. I know I was throwing some numbers at you and I'm not a math guy. That's why I got into fitness. We've got a yes from guest. Yes from Sandy. Yes from Kirsten. Good, good. All right. So no questions so far. Feel free to use the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it, or I'll look back after. Okay. Number 4 of the 10 tips is how you train. And there's not a huge opportunity here to burn more calories or burn more fat in a workout. The primary role of a strength workout is to build strength, preserve muscle. Unfortunately, you've got a lot of fitness programs out there that say, oh, do our boot camp and you're burning calories for 36 hours after. Yeah, but it's not enough to really move the needle. That said, I like to optimize the training environment to, to help you lose fat, but also make it time efficient. And we know that rest periods are important. So how do you get around that? Well, what we call antagonist supersets is how we program for most of our clients, which means opposing muscle groups back to back. So you still get that active rest in the one muscle group while you're training the other, rinse and repeat. And you burn some marginally more calories than you would if you were just doing straight sets. Okay, for example, dumbbell bench press, dumbbell rows. So chest and back, opposing muscle groups, antagonist, or curls and a tricep movement. So biceps, triceps. Okay. So I'll show you some example sessions in a minute. Now, the other ways we get a little funky with it is metabolic finishers and aerobic ab training. Now, these are fairly similar but one's more focused on conditioning, the finishers. One's more focused on like core strength and trying to target a bit of belly fat. Okay. So with these, an example might be these heavy conditioning exercises, like a sled push. You'll have a hard time finding that. Uh-oh, my doorbell's ringing, so the dog is barking. Hopefully that's not too loud. So battle ropes, you may have seen those. Kettlebell swings at home, most people can do just squats and planks and get the benefit of a finisher. Whereas this one differs slightly by emphasizing a core exercise first, and then a conditioning exercise to mobilize belly fat. There actually is 2 research papers that showed some evidence of that being beneficial. It will not make a huge difference. Keep that in mind if your diet sucks, okay? But it can help. So that's how we set up the workouts. You might want to screenshot this. It's just a couple sample training sessions. Not all of these are home friendly. There is some exercises here that would involve a bit more equipment than you might have, but at least it gives you the idea. Generally, with most people, we do more of a full body, which would mean more exercises, but this is kind of a quick and dirty version of that. Fancy AI image of a gym. Okay. Segueing from that one nicely is walk more than workout. If your goal is fat loss, you burn a heck of a lot more calories in those other 23 hours of the day outside of the gym. And if you're not moving at all, and I get that your job is going to be challenging you in this regard, it's very hard to rely solely on your nutrition to drop fat over time. So what that means is like hitting that gold standard of 8,000, maybe 10,000 steps at the upper limit. Not expecting to be perfect with that, but it requires being fairly intentional in a world that's set up to sit at work, sit at a computer at work, right? At your couch at home, in a car when you commute. Like those are all things that are working against you. So there's some ideas on this slide. Walk and talk meetings. I try to do one or two of those a week, where if I don't need to screen share or be on a slideshow like this, I'll just move around. Standing desk can help. I had good intentions with that, but I find I can't do certain things. So if I'm passively consuming something like this, I'll actually use my walking pad. And then, of course, the obvious stuff, take the stairs over the elevators. Basically, be intentionally inefficient. Park further away. It can account for 15 to 50% of your daily calorie burn, which always exceeds what you get out of a workout. So keep that in mind. It's an obvious one, but it's a hack. So for me, I do right now, anyway, I get an hour of work in first thing. I wake up extra early, and then when I feel like I'm starting to zone out, I do an incline walk, and I'll talk about how I really maximize that 20 minutes. But just try to get in at work. How can you move more? Go to the further water cooler. And then evening activities, try not to be in the habit of vegging out on the couch. If you're watching stuff, you can pair that with movement, a treadmill and a show. Boom. Okay. Type a yes if you're still with me. We've got pretty good amount of the 108 that registered on live. We absolutely will get out the replay. Those who are in my inbox right now, so you had to miss it. Okay. Good, we got yeses. Okay, going a little bit into the hack territory here with something called protein sparing modified fasts. So intermittent fasting was all the rage years ago. I was a proponent of it at times, but what they found wasn't any more beneficial than exercise for autophagy, like cell turnover, like living longer. And it certainly wasn't overly beneficial if your goal was like toning up, building muscle while dropping fat. Fasting for long periods of time, counterproductive to that. Your workouts suffer, and you can potentially lose muscle in the process. So this was the workaround. And there's some cool research on this where high protein, very low calorie days. This isn't something you run forever, but even once or twice a month can kind of give you that little boost, that hack to break a plateau. Okay. There's a hefty dose of protein right there. So example day of this, and I wouldn't go into this if you're a cold turkey, you haven't done anything for the last month. Like if you're in good momentum right now and you feel stuck, this is like one of those plateau breakers to try, experiment. one day, you felt great from it, awesome. If not, not something you necessarily have to rely on. But what it does is just curbs appetite because you're eating a lot of protein and puts you into a steeper deficit than you otherwise would get if you were eating, a balanced meal with fats and carbs included. Okay, so screenshot that if you need it. But it's everything you'd think and more. A lot of protein, very little else. Not for the faint of heart, but can work here and there. And keep in mind, you might want bone broth for electrolytes, hydration, because you can get dehydrated, not eating carbs or anything else for that matter. So where I see a potential benefit for this is like after you went with good intentions for a vacation, but you were at an all-inclusive resort and you started every day with pina colada and then all the bets were off and you came back 5 pounds overweight. Then you could do this for a day or 2 or 3, quickly reset, then get back into your normal routine. All is forgotten, right? Could be a plateau breaker, could be a weekly reset day, potentially, especially if someone has trouble adhering on weekends. It could be like the back end Monday reset day. I don't like people getting into like a binge purge mindset, but it could be potentially decent in those situations. Okay. All right. Makes sense. Not for the faint of heart. If you already have trouble hitting your protein goal on most days, it's not much more protein, but it's not much else. So your meals will suck. But hey, if you feel frustrated right now, perfect plateau breaker. Okay. Moving on, number 7 of 10. We're trying to make good time here. I know we're kind of coming up against it. We have the whole hour, but we're not going to use it. So weight vest walks. So these keep coming up. All the influencers talk about it. Audrey says nuts for protein. Not a good source of protein. Dangerous source of protein, in fact, because it's 4 times the amount of calories from fat, if not more. Healthy for you in extreme moderation, but on a diet, that's one of those things I tend to steer people away from because it's so easy to overconsume, and then your deficit becomes a surplus. So in the research, versus a regular walk without weight, 30% difference in the calories burned. Would that make a huge difference over a day or 2? No, but over months, yes. So you could just wear a backpack that you fasten securely so that you're not, giving your lower back too much needless pain, or one of these vests. You can buy them anywhere. And you want them evenly distributed, like weight on the front and back. If it's all on the front, again, your lower back is going to take too much of the brunt. So if you already walk, you're just adding this as a simple way of adding more resistance. An incline is better if you have somewhere you can kind of hike or a hilly area in your area, or a treadmill incline. Okay. So this is if you want to actually full progressive program. I'm not leaving anything left to chance here tonight. This is how you get away from, our bodies adapt so quickly to cardio. Like you do a 1K run, the first time you burn 300 calories. A month from now, a 1K run barely moves the needle. Our bodies are adaptive machines, and unfortunately, that's why exercise doesn't become the most efficient tool for fat loss. But in this case, we're always making it challenged by adding weight to the vest, increasing the incline, increasing the duration or the frequency. Okay. So at a certain point, you'd want to just remove this entirely and then give it a week or 2 and then reset the cycle. You could do this without a weighted vest, add more incline. Daniela, 30-minute rowing. Yeah, anything that has your body moving is fine. I like walking for the simple fact that we don't tend to burn out from it. Like running, sprinting, like we can't really do that 7 days a week. So 365 days of the year, but we can walk most days unless we've got something wrong with our feet. So, yeah, screenshot that page. Pretty straightforward. It's just every 2 weeks, think about what can I do to make this more challenging for myself. In anything you do, that's the way to go. Aggressive overload. Okay, who sort of dopamine fasting? Type a Y in the chat or an N if you say no, if you've never heard of this before. It's got some no's coming in. Okay. Well, that's good. So it's new information for you. So nowadays we are dopamine addicts because we have this device that pops up notifications every 2 seconds, and we can, anytime we get bored, we can scroll social media and get quick hits of dopamine, and everything we eat spikes dopamine. So this is about trying to take control and planning maybe a 24-hour reset to start, but 48 hours seems to show more benefit, where we eliminate the artificial sweeteners and the real sweeteners from our day-to-day eating. We may have to block certain apps on our phone or go full turkey. This is scary, I know. A screen-free day or two. And ultimately maintain that balance. What it does is just breaks the cycle of food cravings or the habits we have built within our life to check our phones at X amount of times, to eat certain things that we're running on autopilot, and we want to try to take control of that. So these can be an effective strategy. Not easy. Maybe a weekend is not the best place to start. On Friday, you remove all the trigger foods, you stock whole foods, you prepare meals in advance, you stick to that, and you're trying to get rid of the sugars, the added sugars, the sweeteners, things that make your food taste hyper palatable. Giving it a couple days to kind of reset your taste buds. And you may want to get rid of the caffeine and the diet drinks and all these other things that have stimulatory effects. Okay. Who's willing to give this a shot, even if for a half day? I'd love to hear a yes in the chat, guys. I think this would be actually the most helpful one for a lot of people, but it's the scariest. Guest is gonna give it a try. It's because he's anonymous, that's why. And Alex, okay, good. Yeah, let me know how it goes. I've done it once, and I've been scared to try it again. So it was boring. But it worked, at least for a while. Okay, so keep that in mind. Next up, I find most people don't fail for lack of effort, more so because they beat themselves up and they get into this all or nothing mindset. And this is a strategy I'll use myself, but with people we work with, to get them out of that, mindset of having to be on or they're off completely. So the 2-day rule basically means that's the maximum amount of days you have to blow off your plan, to say F it, and return within this time frame. And oftentimes, it doesn't mean waiting till Monday, which is the real win. If you can start one day earlier than you usually do, with the next meal mindset, you'll be so much further ahead than you would have been if you just kept, resetting Monday, blowing off your plan for 3 days every week. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This way it's 2 days. You have to get back on track on Sunday. So the next meal mindset is what I talked about. If you have a really off-plan meal and you feel guilty about it, try to put it in the rearview mirror, but try to get in the mindset of the next meal is going to be good. Next meal is going to be better. I'm going to hydrate. I'm going to move more. I'm going to get 80% compliant back on track. And that's what avoids that whole derailment people go through where they just compound the problem and they go weeks on end. Because we all know one day of bad eating doesn't really make a difference. Just as one good day of eating doesn't make a difference. It's the compound effect in either direction. Okay. We're almost there, guys. Smart supplementation. So I battled with this one, but it kept coming up in the questions, like, what supplements do you recommend? And I'm not a big proponent of supplements. However, I use some, but it's for me personally. So these are the ones that are pretty much universally recommended as helpful. Creatine monohydrate. You'll see a lot of that out there right now. It's a bit of the popular in vogue one, but it's because it works, because the research is so strong on it. For muscle preservation, for performance, antidepressant effects. I would say anyone over 40 or 50 especially should be strongly considering it for your bone health, muscle preservation, and brain function. It's all interconnected. And it's fairly difficult to get enough out of your diet. So consider it. Creatine monohydrate is the most research-backed one. It's also the cheapest, so bonus. So if you use creatine, actually type 1 in the chat. I'd love to hear. I wonder if this is really out there. There's enough people actually using it now, or if it's just because I'm so niche in my little vacuum Okay, there is ones coming. Excellent. That's good to see. Caffeine, overused, one of the most overused stimulants, but has a real benefit pre-workout. When I say enhanced fat oxidation, it doesn't mean you're burning fat. It just means you use more fat for energy. So that's the difference between oxidation and fat burning. Two different things. But if you have more energy, you get a couple extra reps, you work harder, awesome. If you work out in the evening, though, the pros versus cons on that are probably skewed in the cons direction because it can disrupt sleep. And everyone's a little bit different in terms of how they metabolize it. Why I recommend protein powder? It's one of the best sources of protein, pure protein, very little extra calories from anything else, and it's so convenient. It's hard to hit your protein goals from meat and whole foods alone, but mixing in a shake a day can really help. And you don't need any fancy supplements for this, but like table salt, potassium, things like that. They're often in sports drinks. Use those sparingly, but salt is underrated when it comes to preventing fatigue. Okay, so I know we talked about that in the last training. We won't get too far in depth on that now. Okay, so just screenshot this. It's an example of how I use them. Wouldn't dive too deep into this right now, but this is just the timing of things. Less important than just being consistent with taking them. If you end up try creatine consistently for at least 3-4 weeks, daily dose, you won't notice much of a difference prior to that. It has to kind of saturate in your muscles. Okay, so there's the 10 tips for summer success. Of those 10, I'd love to hear what numbers you're going to consider trying. So for example, if it's smart supplementation, just type a 10 in the chat. Curious. I wouldn't try to do all of them at once, but the one that you took the most notes on is probably the one to go for. There we go. We got an 8. I like it. I think that one might be the most beneficial. All right, come on, keep it coming. You guys are scared to share. You're all too wise to it. You're all basics, work best types, aren't you? Protein timing, getting more meals throughout the day, Joyce. Like it. Irene's going to rock 1, 7, and 10. Beautiful. Weight Fest will be really helpful for you guys that are sharing that one. But again, just load up a backpack with textbooks, strap it on tight, and that'll work all the same. Okay. Yeah, so the dopamine. Very good. Okay. With that all out of the way, none of that makes a difference unless you've got these in place. So this will be a refresher if you're a client, maybe some new information, but it's so important to get this down. Okay. So what is the big 5? Well, it's simply this pyramid. Calorie control, strength train, water intake, sleep, and movement, meaning your steps. And you got to be hitting on all cylinders with these to really see the outcomes you want. Nothing else really matters until you get these in place. So really briefly, already talked about what they are, just with more emojis here. Cap control means your day's allotment of calories and then enough protein to preserve muscle, take the edge off your appetite, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, 15% to 25% deficit, 25% the most you should go. MitchCalvert.com/calculator. If you don't have any numbers set up, we'll give you some. And then 1 gram per protein, 1 gram of protein per pound of goal body weight is sort of the gold standard nowadays. So if you're aiming to be 180 pounds, 180 grams. And now the catch is you've got to be 80% compliant to see outcomes you want, which is 80%, 6 out of 7 days per week. What is that per month? 26? 26 out of 30, depending on the month. All right. Number 2, water intake, 3L Club. It does help with fat metabolism. Don't go too far into that area, but you understand without hydration, it's hard to change the situation. Hunger management, brain works better, body works better, you have better workouts, and so on down the way. 3 liters is generally the recommended target, but it kind of varies based off body size. I wouldn't obsess about like being right at that number. But start with a liter when you're dehydrated first thing in the morning, in the first couple hours, and try to drink throughout the day. Aim for clear, light yellow urine by midday, unless you're taking a multivitamin, which can get peed out that way. If it looks like motor oil coming out, you're probably dehydrated and you drink more. There's your rule of thumb. Sleep, probably the toughest, arguably, for those in my stage of life. And then as you get older, hormones start to disrupt it. So easier said than done, but the best tip I can give you is to have like a really rigid sleep and wake time, meaning within 30 to 60 minutes, 7 days of the week, you go to bed at the same time and you wake up roughly at the same time. Circadian rhythms. It's a big deal. Bedroom is cool, dark, and quiet. Everyone's definition of cool can be different, though. I tend to like actually a little bit warmer than average. The screens and devices, if you don't like to get rid of the screen in that last hour before bed, there are blue light blocking glasses you can wear. Buy them online. And then watch the caffeine, stimulants, and alcohol near bedtime. It might help you fall asleep, but it'll actually wreck the quality of your sleep. Okay. Cool. We're still with me. We're almost wrapping this up now. And then this one, obviously, we've already talked about strength training. It's pretty much non-negotiable, but there's different versions of what this can look like. Just as long as you're picking up weights, putting them down 2 to 3 times a week, you're probably doing enough for the average person. It depends on your level of development, but just trying to track performance and get stronger over time is really the key there. And then the steps. It can be the difference between 300 calories. It's almost a pound a week if you were to hit this step goal early on in the early stages of your transformation by 300 calories every day times 7. Never as simple on paper or in the real world as it is on paper, the math, but just aim for that 8,000 plus steps. If you don't get it all the time, no big deal, but it really does make a difference. And it's fairly achievable for most. All right, so you know what to do. A lot of that was probably a refresher for many of you. You know, we've got lots of people on here who are already clients of ours who understand that the missing link isn't often the knowing, it's the doing. And DIY rarely gets us to our goals, let's be honest. I made the mistake of trying to DIY an IKEA dresser and end up putting a nail through the top. So now TaskRabbit, it's the best thing ever invented. They come to the house, they build things for me. I hand them my man card, all good. I save time. I spend more time on my business. It's a win-win. So knowledge isn't enough because life gets in the way. And oftentimes we're our own worst enemy and we can rationalize starting over on Monday and get into that cycle of not getting anywhere. Okay. So we want this summer to be different. You still have 8 weeks technically before anything serious. So we don't want the same old story because I hear from people all the time, I wish I got started sooner. It's the old cliche. Your news story can be, I'm down 8-10 pounds, down inches. My summer clothes are out of the closet. I feel great in anything I put on. That's what it's about. But getting there means starting now and taking action. So Brian, I don't know if he's on the call, but he started last April. Obviously, the visual change is there. But what we hacks mindset, trying to shortcut the process. And life's a lot simpler for him now. Martha, which I've talked about a fair bit. I don't know if she said she might make it. If I don't see you, let's see. No, she is not here. Nonetheless, she's a real person. This is obviously not in 8 weeks, this picture, but it started with this, right? It started with deciding now was the time. I think she was in Mexico and didn't like how she looked in photos, and that sort of was the trigger to reach out. But you know, by July, she was down maybe a third of that, and the rest is history. Cool. So the big takeaway from this call is you don't need to overhaul your life. You just need a simple plan, and you need to surround yourself with support. That's really a big piece to the puzzle. Is when you're being observed, when someone's nudging you in the right direction, you show up for yourself. But you show up for someone else you don't want to disappoint. And that's really where the magic happens. I had a mentor tell me it's the law of diminishing intent. I didn't know this was a thing, but when you get that initial spark that, oh, I should do something, you've got to take action, because every day that passes from that day is more and more unlikely that you ever will. There's no later. There's only now. Taking action is really the secret, because motivation follows action. It's not the other way around. And then once you start getting results, momentum builds, the habits get entrenched, and you wake up 12 weeks, 16 weeks from now as a new person. That's where the magic happens. All right. Type of 1, if you believe in this law. I'd love to hear that. It's proven true for me in my life to this point. And anytime I procrastinate on something, it's like, oh God, 6 months, a year goes by. Merely, Joyce, 1s, Daniela, 1s. Good. Preaching to the choir on that one. So just keep that in mind. A little action, a little step forward is going to move mountains. It's that domino effect. But if you don't take action today, you think, oh, I'll think about it. Nothing happens, unfortunately, right? So I don't have an actual pitch for you right now. I do have a wait list for coaching, but I just wanted to kind of give you a summary of what is important if you want to move forward in any capacity right now, is to track your habits, have some form of weekly check-in, social support, reward systems, expert guidance, commitment. Sounds like a long list, right? But that's what we've tried to tie into our system, because human beings are unpredictable, but actually we're all kind of wired the same way at the end of the day. And there, you start to notice trends and themes, and you work with enough people over time. As long as you can gamify the process, you can give them the support and nudges they need when they need it, and give them a system to follow, anyone and everybody can accomplish their goals. And that's awesome. That's what it's really all about. So for those in the program, again, next Tuesday, this starts 8 weeks to the beach, points-based challenge, top points person gets a staycation at the Fort Garry. If you're not in Winnipeg, we'll have to find an equivalent hotel that's as cool as the Fort Garry. But yeah, the idea here is to be a bit of a fat loss sprint and then show you how to stabilize and make it fun at the same time. Okay. So that said, if you are here and you're not in the program, feel free to scan this. I guess I should put this in the chat if you can't scan, if you're on a phone. For what we offer, like a free assessment. So this is just no strings attached. Let me exit this. Got a million tabs open. Oh, there you are. There it is. Okay. Okay. Is that in the chat yet? Doesn't look like it popped up. Interesting. Okay. Well, I will link that in a second. If you can scan, that's the step to do it. If you want to take one actionable step from this call, this would be it. I'll come back with some video feedback to what you're doing currently, how to make some adjustments. Keep moving forward here. We're almost done. Technical difficulties. I think that's already been kind of summarized. So next steps, assess what you're doing currently. Take the assessment, step 7. If you're stuck, I would encourage that, certainly. That's as straightforward as I've already responded to my own check-in, but the Big 5 framework, and then add a couple of those top 10 strategies, but not all. I don't think it would be feasible for everyone to do all. And then find that accountability somewhere. Certainly, Abby on my team, Mo on my team, my other coaches do have some capacity. So if you do want to, jump ahead the queue, you can just go right to that link right now. But working with me right now is on a case-by-case basis. All right. I finally found the chat. The scan has been blocked. I don't know what that means, guest. Scan, I guess your computer doesn't like Google Forms, but there should be a workaround there. If not, email me. I'll send you a different link to open that up. All right. Cool. So of these 8 steps, what are you on already? What do you need to work on? I'd love to hear that in the chat. And then I'll open it up to some quick questions if anyone has any. I'll call it a night. Still can't find the chat. There it is. There it is. No questions. Everyone's gone quiet all of a sudden. Good. Okay. No pressure, but I'll stare awkwardly at you guys until someone jumps in. We got a thank you in the chat. I like it, really. Good stuff. Which one of these 8-ish steps are you already working on or need to work on? For me, I'm going to definitely enroll in our 8 weeks to the beach. So I get as much value from those as our clients do.
Mitch,
And
can I ask a question?
yes, go ahead, Diane.
Two things. One, when you put the meals up and the protein, it for the full day would come to like 140 roughly grams protein. Was that pretty accurate? And if you wanted to weigh 130 pounds, you should be eating 130 grams of protein every day. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So for
Okay.
you, that works fairly well.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be a little bit different. It's just an example, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, definitely you're on it. You're on it at that point. That's perfect for you.
Okay.
For someone that's trying to get to 200 pounds, then obviously their protein number would have to reflect that. But yeah, the basic premise is basically it. Protein, lots of produce, fill up, drink your water, hydrate with bone broth. It also has some protein. And just kind of grin and bear it for a day and see how you do. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it as a continuous thing, but it can be a helpful little tool there for sure. Okay, Irene's in for the challenge. You don't give up on me, so thank you for that. Direct message from guest. Not sure who that is, but I appreciate it. We're not giving up, that's for sure. Okay, guys. Going once, twice. Joyce is going to join the challenge. Excellent. Oh, got it. Okay, I won't say your name, but appreciate that. And Kirsten, nice to see you, Kirsten. Hopefully all is well. Still crushing. Danielle, thanks. Okay, awesome, guys. I will post the replay somewhere in the next day or two. And if you missed it, you can absolutely scan through that again. But if you have a takeaway, if you're not a current client, definitely fill out that assessment. Just
Mitch,
take one
sorry.
actual step. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I ask one more thing?
Yes.
I drink about 4 decaf a day, and I really can't go without that artificial sweetener, or at least a liquid artificial sweetener. Is that something wrong with that on 4 decafs?
No, I'm not one of those types that says artificial sweeteners are poison. Like the research is not.
Yeah. Okay.
Research is actually clear that it's fine up to a point, and 4 packets
Yeah.
of artificial sweetener is not that. I guess you're referring to the dopamine detox, though. For those 2 days, the idea is to eliminate everything, but it's temporary, right? Just to kind of reset your taste.
Okay.
Something to try, but yeah, definitely don't change your coffee drinking habits just over this. And thumbs up. Okay, awesome, guys. Again, I'll put in the chat that assessment. That will be the actionable takeaway. There's no, what do they call it? Bait and switch. There's nothing there that's really shady. It's just me helping you out with some tips. Doesn't take me much time. But if you do want to get more one-to-one support, we can set you up with Abby or Mo as well. Thanks for the boost. Yes, Joyce, we all need that once in a while. Often, majority of us just need to be reminded more than taught new information, but this is a bit of both. So hopefully it was helpful. All right. Thanks, guys. Adios. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.